All right. I think I'm here. Hello, everyone. I don't know how many people I have actually with me. Oh, my phone's talking to me. Shh, phone. There we go. Cool. If you can see me, let me know so I'm not talking to myself. I'm actually really excited to have some people here today. We are going to kind of just discuss some stuff. Cool. I'm seeing some hi. Hi, Paul. Hi, Casper. Hi, Peter. Casper, that's a cool name. My son actually has a really good friend named Casper. Sweet, loud and clear. I've got the audio right today. I won't lie, I was running around 2 minutes before this trying to get coffee and get everything hooked up. So, I have had an idea for a while now, and I haven't had a chance to do it yet, so I figure what better way to do it than to hop on a live stream where we have to do it. I'll say, well, we're talking about this thing, so then I'm kind of on the hook to do it. So here's the idea, and I can actually share this. Let's get rid of that. We don't need that. There we go. Let me actually share this gist. Pop. It is Casper with a K, just like you. And you are the second person that I've ever known with that name. Oh, you know what? It's Casper with a K, but it's got K-A-S-P-O-R. So slightly different spelling, but I now know 2 Caspers in my life. So yeah, very cool name. I just sent a gist in there of some basic thoughts. So here's the big picture. Right now we are redesigning symphonycast.com, which I'm really excited about. We've been working on it for a while. Starting with the course and video pages, like the really important pages. Anyway, we might see that deployed today, tomorrow. It's really, really close. But the point is we're using Tailwind, we're using Turbo, Stimulus, and we're getting to reimagine and rethink the way that we do things. And what we're realizing is that we're building a lot of really common things. So for example, when you use Bootstrap, you are, probably all of you know this. If you use Bootstrap, then if you want to use tabs or drop downs or something like that, they have, styling for it, but they also have some built-in JavaScript for it. If you're using Tailwind and you're building this stuff by scratch, then you don't have the JavaScript for it. As probably many of you know, I like using Flowbyte kind of as an inspiration for, yeah, they have tabs, for what things can look like, but you still need JavaScript to power this. Flowbyte does also have a JavaScript library that can connect these tabs. The problem is that these things don't always play nicely with Turbo, and I want to say that in like a different way. The JavaScript behind these is not written in a super robust way. So, for example, with Flowbyte, it will work on page load, and as soon as you navigate, it will stop working. And this is true for tabs, drop downs, whatever, because it's registering the listeners on the initial page load, and that's it. Flowbyte actually has their own extra file in their package that's specifically for Turbo that reinitializes all listeners, but it's just kind of hacked on. In fact, if you use Turbo Frames, it can cause your listeners to potentially be registered multiple times. The point is, we found ourselves building things like tabs, tooltips, modals, and it wasn't a lot of code, but it's like, we sort of figured out, like, with this HTML and like this small stimulus controller, like, you have this fantastic modal system that you can use everywhere. And beyond that, there are already reusable components out there, reusable stimulus controllers like stimuluscomponents.com, that I don't know if people are aware of. So they have something for dropdown, they have something for popover, which we use in the last stack tutorial. So, the idea is that I want people to be aware that these tools exist, and I want a place for us to be able to share them. So I want to be able to put up our modal our modal Twig component, our modal markup basically, and our modal stimulus controller, and have it somewhere where everyone can use that, and also like then improve on it. And this has already happened. I'm calling this Modal Week right now because we're releasing modal, releasing our modal chapters on the last stack. But even yesterday, I posted something for modals, and 3 hours after I posted it, somebody had a suggestion on a way to improve it. So it was like, yes, if we can get these stimulus controllers and this markup in a shared spot, then we can like make it better and better and better, and we can all share it. So let me check here, Peter. The idea, have been thinking about doing the same for Twig functions, filters, etc. Every CMS has a bunch, and it would be useful to share them for other projects. Okay, awesome. Yeah, so that's kind of what I'm trying to like figure out here is what's the best way to share these things, and what are we sharing exactly? So in that gist, the easiest thing to share would be what I'm calling components, like HTML chunks. So here's an HTML chunk and a stimulus chunk for tabs or for modals or for tooltips and popovers. I don't know, maybe it will expand a little bit beyond that to be like other Twig filters that come from other languages, or not other languages, but that aren't kind of part of the core of Twig. So in my mind, I want this to be feature-based. The idea is that we can go to ux.symfony.com and search for like whatever your problem is. So Peter, I don't know like what specific Twig functions and filters you had in mind, but my thinking is that you're searching for the problem you're trying to solve, not the specific Twig function or Twig filter. And that's what we would show here. You would say, oh yeah, you're looking for, I don't know what it is, something. And here's the solution. The solution for it is Composer required this package that gives you that Twig filter, and maybe that's it. I don't know. Or maybe in that case, there's also like some Twig markup that goes with it. So after all that rambling, what thoughts do you all have, and what are the types of things that you would want to see on this? What are the types of pain points? What are the types of things if you're starting a new project, you're like, oh, I want to go grab this thing to put on my site? I would love to hear from you all in the real world. I have one real project, but Matthew says, about sharing this kind of code, I think the most important is to share HTML markup without any predefined styles. Oh, I was gonna talk about that. I'm glad you brought that up. To allow most of the devs to implement the functional behavior of the components. Confirm component. Without the need to copy paste HTML and adapt it to their CSS. So yeah, so that's another question is, for me selfishly, since we're using Tailwind, I want to be able to copy and paste just like a modal that's made with Tailwind. So do we give you markup in Tailwind? And if you're not using Tailwind, you remove those. Do we give you do we give you a Tailwind version, but then also maintain a non-Tailwind version, which is probably the same thing, just with the Tailwind classes removed? What about bootstrap? Do we really want to try to have 3 different versions of these things? I'm not sure. I'm not sure what everyone is using for. Yeah, I don't know. For the modal, for example, it's there's certain things about the modal that are useful to share in the styling. For example, with our modal, probably get that open. So I'm not talking in generics here. Let's see here. Where am I? Let's go to. There we go. This is our. You may have seen this by this point. This is our tutorial creation system. So I'm fast forwarding through our tutorial so I can see what the code looks like on a specific step in the tutorial. All right, let's open that up so we can take a look. And we're looking for the modal template. So this is something that actually is going to be released in the next week or so on that tutorial. But on the styling thing, there are things that are actually nice to share. For example, this is subjective, but the width that I used on our modal actually took some work. It was not just, I'll leave the styling up to you. This was something where I was like, okay, I want the width to be full when the browser is small, but then if your browser gets bigger, so not mobile, then I want you to get smaller but fit the content, but with a max width of 50%, but then with this other option to allow it to go smaller in some cases. So the point is, you can see that there's a little bit of kind of opinionated things going on here, and you could totally delete this from your project. But also it was something that I discovered, and there's going to be things that you all discover, like little nice things that might actually be nice to include. Matthew says, Matthew, who had just said having HTML markup without any predefined styles, says, secretly, I would love to have pre-styled Tailwind components, but I know that most of my clients, even if they use Tailwind, they want to customize every little thing. So, I mean, Matthew, if what you're copying has Tailwind to start, that's part of the reason that I'm thinking strongly that we are copying these things into our projects and not installing them into our projects is for that reason, because we're going to need to customize these things. So for me, I would imagine in Tailwind, I would want the full kind of a little bit more of an opinionated version with the classes, and then I could change those, but that's kind of what I'm asking right now. Paul, could you manage the 3 versions in a modular way, or were they too different? I think that is something that we need to discover, and maybe we can make them all work. And I think what you're kind of thinking is, like internally when we're building these, like in the code, right? Like we have something like this, right? And this isn't what the user would see on the site, but we have something dynamic, so we can kind of render the same Twig components in the 3 different modes. Not sure if it would work or not. Probably we could make, there might be certain times when with Tailwind you want to have a couple extra elements, and without Tailwind you don't. But probably we probably need to at least choose one to be a first-class citizen. Probably be like Tailwind is the first-class citizen, and then maybe we, in some modular way, try to adapt those to the vanilla CSS and the bootstrap. I think it's worth a try, and I'm not sure how many problems we would actually run into. Or to be able to easily overwrite CSS. Oh yeah, like Flowbyte, yeah. As they are Twig components, wouldn't it be possible to pass styling or classes via the bound PHP class? Yes, I still think it's something that we would want the users to customize. So I'm not too worried about having things be like reusable out of the box. I'm cool with you copying this into your project and just like changing it. I really like Symfony UX initiative, but I've always found it difficult to implement JS components. Wouldn't it be nice to have a library that plays nicely with Turbo and provides a lot of common JS components, just like Flowbyte you showed? I never like pulling together multiple JS libraries for a single UI. So that, I want to hear more about that, because I think what I'm hearing is what I'm saying here, which is I want to pull in a JS component. I want to pull in some JavaScript functionality for tooltips, popovers, tabs, modals. I don't want to have to grab those from multiple places. But please tell me if you say JavaScript components, like please tell me like what else you might mean by that, because that's what I want to figure out is what are the things that you're looking for, and let's make sure that we have those in there. Yeah, Peter, go for Tailwind for now, revise later if demand. That's kind of what I want to do, because that's what we use, so selfishly. Matthew, what I loved in your last series is to write a bit of HTML. And sorry, you're all probably reading these comments, but I'm reading them also out loud. Write a bit of HTML, add a data controller in it, and boom, it works. Maybe providing Stimulus controller as a package and show HTML examples in docs as a solution. Yeah, so I think that is, so that's actually, I think that's what we're after here. So there's going to be certain cases where the JavaScript that we're using is already a package, and that's really cool. So for an example is, if we had a section that was about building a popover, probably we would just use the stimulus components popover. So in that case, there wouldn't be a spot that says, hey, here's the stimulus controller that you need to copy and paste. It would say, oh, just run import map require stimulus popover, and you have your stimulus controller. So I think we should give ourselves the flexibility to have both situations, which I think is cool. And again, the point is to be solutions-based. So if there already is a controller out there in the world for popovers, then we can use that. If there wasn't, then we can give you the 25-line stimulus controller that you can copy into your project. But I also think that should be motivating, right? If we, for example, with the modal controller, I will show you that. This is the modal controller that we built for last stack. It's really cool, but and it's not really that complicated, but it is 60 lines of code. So this would be something where at first we might say, here's the modal controller you need. But since it's actually a lot of code, it should be a motivating factor for us to say, you know what? Let's take that modal controller and actually release it as its own, not PHP package, not Symfony UX package, just its own NPM package, so that this section can get smaller and just include installing that controller instead of copying all that code. And the cool thing about that is then we can become a positive source for the greater Stimulus community. So Stimulus Components, this is created by a Ruby on Rails person. And I'm so thankful that they didn't wrap this up inside of a Ruby gem. They made these real packages, and I would like us to do the same thing. All right, cool, Matthew. Then, yeah, we got that. Tarmo, date picker component would also be nice. Those native ones from the browsers are not good. Yeah, I actually agree with that. Okay, here we go. So about those components. Exactly the functionality you just listed. Modals, tabs, sliders, sticky headers, footers, off-canvas menus, lightboxes, notifications. Yeah, awesome. Yep. So I think the thinking has been in Symfony UX so far that really two things. One, with the Symfony UX components, packages, whatever you want to call them. Let's call them packages, right? Because components is a loaded word. The idea has been to wrap existing third-party libraries. So for example, autocomplete is just a wrapper around the TomSelect JavaScript library. So I think the thinking so far with these kind of JavaScript components has been to create a Symfony UX package. And one of the motivations for this different direction is we were finding cases where we wanted to offer a solution. Somebody had a really cool idea, but the idea of creating a giant PHP package just to ship a little bit of JavaScript was kind of ridiculous. And there's actually an example of this. Let's see if I can find it. There we go, the Pathward Strength Controller. So this is a really cool idea where, look at that. How cool is that? Awesome, I love that. The problem with it is that it's just, or at least originally, it actually might be fancier now. A little bit, but it's basically just JavaScript. So the idea of wrapping it up in this giant PHP package, registering on packages, creating a subtree split on Symfony, it just doesn't make sense. So this is something where it's like, no, let's ship this off on a page where you can just copy this controller, or we release this controller as a third-party controller. So I think that there's a lot of effort that goes into creating a new UX package. So with this, we could more quickly go down that list and say, okay, what's our solution for tooltips? What's our solution for lightboxes, canvas menus, all those things that were listed there. Another thing that has been on my mind, and it's sort of related, is that so far through the history of the internet and also with UX, as I mentioned, we've been wrapping these third-party JavaScript packages. So in some cases, when you wrap a third-party JavaScript package, so for autocomplete, we're wrapping a JavaScript package called TomSelect. Cool. What's great about this is it gives us all this kind of functionality out of the box, right? The downside of this is that it's actually the JavaScript package which is generating that HTML. So if you viewed the page source here, you wouldn't see any of the HTML for this element here. See, we have a little dark mode bug there. All this HTML is wrapped up inside that JavaScript package, which is kind of the opposite of the new philosophy on the internet of serving HTML from your application, putting your HTML on your server side. For us, Twig templates. So another thing I'm kind of thinking about with things like autocomplete, or even things like a calendar widget is, does it make more sense? And I think it's at least worth a try. Does it make more sense to release packages or tools where that calendar widget or the markup that makes this drop down and makes these individual items and makes this is actually controlled by us? This actually lives in a Twig template. And we control this. And of course, maybe we give you a Twig template so you don't have to do a lot of work if you don't want to. But this is just something that's in a Twig template, and there's no fancy JavaScript happening behind the scenes. And so if you're building something like this, or if your designer is building something like this, you're not going through that fight of how do I style the TomSelect markup, or how can I control the TomSelect markup, or how can I control the calendar, or this calendar doesn't look the way we want it to on this little calendar on this date widget. If that lives inside of a Twig template, then it's easy. You're in control. We're sending that over the server. So that's something that I'm eager to look at, and then those become, again, like tools that we could potentially share across the Stimulus ecosystem. Imagine there being like a date picker Stimulus component, and we're the ones that provide the HTML, but this is something that can be used also in the Ruby on Rails community. Because I don't think there's one yet. There's a color picker. I actually haven't used this before. Oh, actually, this is a wrapper around an existing library. So anyway, that's kind of an aside. Let's see here. Oh yeah, any chance to ask the author of Stimulus components to extend their docs for Symfony Asset Mapper? I don't know. It's a good question. I talked a little bit with Nicholas Grekus about that. I don't know if we know this person. I think he's French, and I think maybe Tituan talked to him once upon a time, and he's really nice and open. So yeah, possibly, because this is not our command, right? We're not running yarn add or npm add. And also this spot is slightly different for our install. So I kind of go back and forth on that. If we had our own ux.symfony.com spot where you could search for these tools, then we could kind of tell you the command to run, and we could kind of tell you the exact code that you need in a Symfony app. But maybe it also makes sense, or it makes sense instead to I'll have kind of a Symfony-specific thing over here. Tebow said, I actually started a discussion about that on GitHub, but didn't have much time to make progress on this and ended in the abyss. Yeah, many things do inside GitHub. Select input is one of the most hardest to implement. Every library solves something special, but missing others. So this is really hard to implement the proper way. Yes, it is hard. If I'm understanding correctly, that's basically the autocomplete package, which is why that exists. But I would like to make this even better in 2024. There is someone from Sulu who is interested, Sulu CMS, in case that's hard to understand what I'm saying. They are interested in the autocomplete components, but they have a different UI for the autocomplete component, and it's really interesting. For example, they have cases where they have a input that looks like this, but the way that you select things is not by clicking and selecting from dropdown. You actually click a link, and it opens up the entire, opens up a modal, and then you're browsing inside of a search thing for the items you need, and you check them, and then you hit save or close, and then they get added here. So that's a really cool idea of if we give more control to the users to generate their own HTML, then you can do crazy things like open up a modal here and browse around and find the items you want and have those set back. All right. Anyway, that was actually really helpful. I appreciate getting that feedback, getting that list of kind of the things that we want to see. As you can see, I have kind of my own imaginary list here. Kind of on that, I put the current packages here because the idea, again, is that maybe instead of featuring the packages as the first class citizen on ux.symfony.com, we're featuring more of the solution-based. And this is also motivated a lot by the UI of something like Flowbyte or Tailwind, because that's exactly how both of these are done. They're solutions-based. You find your solution. You have examples. So I really like this kind of idea. Currently fiddling with UX autocomplete inside Silius admin, and markup/styling is one of the problems. Yep, I'm not surprised by that. And we've seen several people recently ask, how can I style Tom Select for Tailwind, or how can I style Tom Select for this other CSS framework? And it's just kind of annoying. You need to, especially with Tailwind, because with Tailwind you are supposed to put the classes on the elements, and you don't have control over the elements, so it's kind of a bummer. And for the Google Maps, it would be nice if there was a package also for OpenStreetMap. Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And that's the cool thing. You use the word package, which is totally fine, but if we lower the barrier of entry to a page on ux.symfony.com, then it just makes it much easier for us to say, yeah, you know what? I have this like pretty good version of OpenStreetMap. Like this markup, this stimulus controller probably could be improved on, but what the heck? Let's add it up there. Other people can use it. They can improve it. Life is good. Versus it having to be this like perfect package that has unit tests and you've really made sure you've thought of all the different edge cases. I don't want that. It's slowing us down, I think. All right, so I'm going to try to keep these live streams down to an hour so that you're not all spending your entire day listening to me. So we have about 30 minutes left. So I think let's just try to do a little bit of building this out. See what happens. So there we go. So I have ux.symfony.com open. If you don't know, the website for ux.symfony.com is just a subdirectory under symfony/ux. So you can pull that down if you want to. You can play with it. It's built on Asset Mapper. It's really nice. So let's see. I already have that over here. Let's close that. I finally restarted my computer recently. So I have no web servers running. So let me just make sure I have everything open local. No, that's not right. Symfony server run, that's what I need. Server start. There we go. Port 9054. That sounds like the perfect port for our project. Awesome. And I was kind of expecting this to happen, which is great. I wanted to see if it would. So I don't have my assets installed, so I can run import map install. Ooh, actually, this is a great opportunity here to, let's see, to upgrade my recipe. Composer recipes. We made a change to the asset mapper recipe. Look at recipe, update available. Composer recipes update. Symfony/asset mapper. Failed to download recipe. Don't do that. Oh man, has anybody else got this recently? Is this just a temporary issue that I'm hitting, or is this a thing? Oh, I see. The original recipe version you have installed could not be found. It may be too old. Okay, I probably installed some old or temporary recipe while I was like actually building out the recipe, maybe even from a pull request. So that's my bad. So I guess I'll update it by hand. Although this is a, actually, here we go. I'll do the force. The nuclear option. Ha 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 ha. And question, how would I accomplish WCAG rules with those packages? The honest answer is I have no idea. So I don't have a good answer for that. Let's see here. All right, so this is interesting. This is unrelated here, but one of the things that Flex does is it will run import map require on any new packages that you have. But that was really interesting that it ran import map require like 10 times. I actually don't know why I did that. I'll have to try that again later. But anyway, let's. So I just did the full recipe reinstall, so it's going to include a bunch of stuff that I don't actually want. So let's see here. Okay, sure. No, we don't want to override that file. Here's actually what I wanted. So this is Stoff's idea. The asset mapper recipe actually adds import map install to composer install scripts. So when you run a composer install, it will make sure your asset/vendor directory has the stuff in it. It's one less thing to worry about. So that's kind of nice. No, we don't want that. I am going to not do any of this stuff. This is it from running import map update, or import map require. And let's see here. We don't need that. Okay, I think we're good. Cool. All right, so let's get to work here. Close a couple things, and what? That still didn't. Oh, probably because, watch, if I run composer install now, in theory, there we go. Import map install. Cool. Now we have the site here. So I want to base this off of Flowbyte. So what I really like about Flowbyte is that you have individual features over here, right? And then in some cases, it might be as simple as a single example on a page. In other situations, I don't know, maybe we'll have multiple examples. Like here's what a modal looks like with this. If you want to make it a little fancier, here's another example. So we might even have sections on the page. I'm not sure. So my idea for implementing this on the server side is, like, we effectively want a database, sort of all of the different things on the site, but we're not actually going to use a database. But we do need a way to discover in our Symfony app what all of the different sections are. So we don't want to maintain this giant list by hand. So we want to have some sort of automated system. So what I'm thinking is, and y'all can shout out suggestions if you want to. Let's see here. Let's create a new directory. Naming things is hard. Let's see. What do we want to call these things? For lack of a better term, I'm going to call them components for now. And then let's create a UI component interface. Ooh, the colored folders in Petri Storm. This is why it's fun to do these. That is from, I believe it's called, Atom Material Icons. So there you go. It's a plugin. Yeah, somebody showed me that about a year ago, and I was like, those are pretty. I want those. So I'm thinking we create a interface, and every individual component will implement that interface and kind of tell us information about it, and then we can kind of loop over all of those components in our site and kind of figure out the list. So I'm going to create a public static function called maybe getName. This doesn't need to be perfect. And I don't know. I'm making this up as I go. On a public function called maybe getTemplate. So what I'm trying to balance here in my head, and I'm probably not doing a great job yet, is the easiest way to implement this would be to just go and create a controller for one specific component. So go create a modal controller, right? And a modal route and a modal template. But I don't want to maintain this like manual list of what all of those are. So I'm trying to create a slightly fancier system so that we can register what these things are. So I get templates, and maybe we need a, well, let's just do that for now. Actually, let's do public static function get key. This will be like its URL key that we use. All right, then let's create. Do I want to do modal first? Let's do toast first. Toast UI components. So let's implement that. UI component interface. Implement those methods. And perfect. Return toast. And we'll return toast down here. And then we'll return UI components toast.html twig. All right, so that's enough because I want to see how we're going to put these things together. So let's create another class that's going to be aware of these. Because again, we kind of want to think of these components as living in the database. So we need a central service that we can ask, hey, what's the list of all of the components? So we're going to create a class that's sort of the repository for the components. So a UI component repository. It's funny to talk about UI components for 30 minutes and then we're like suddenly deep into Symfony and interfaces and dependency injection. All right, construct, and what we're going to have here is private. I think it's going to be an array of components. Or maybe it's going to be a locator. I'm not sure. Let's do that for now. No, I want a locator. Was that service locator? Well, let's leave it for now. You're all going to see how I develop, which is not always remembering everything inside of there. Ooh, UI component collection. Yeah, why not? Let's do that. I'll give it a different name. It is going to be a collection. It's going to be a lazy collection, so we don't instantiate all of them at once. But we're going to be able to like fetch off. So the first thing we need to do is actually just have a... Oh, man. Okay, hold on a second. If we make it a collection right, then we can make it extra fancy. Implement, what is it? Iterator aggregate. So we can loop over them. Ooh. Okay, that totally made things weird, but that's fine. All right, let's try that. All right, so the idea is we're going to have the dependency injection system basically pass us, it's not actually going to be an array, I think, but it's going to pass us an iterable of all of the classes in our system that implement this UI component interface. So that's a two-step process. The first process is we need to get all of our services that have this interface a tag. And then step two is we'll tell Symfony, hey, pass us all tags, all services that have that specific tag into this first argument. So for step one, this is actually one of those areas where I usually do things the wrong way the first time because Nicholas Grekus is constantly adding so many new features to the dependency injection component that I'll do something and it works, but then I'll learn later that there was a way newer, cooler way to do it. So let's see. Auto configuration. We usually do this. Let's look at the docs here. I know how to set up auto configuration inside of a bundle, but I don't do it in my app nearly as often. Let's see. Manually. Tag. Let's see here. Fetching and using services. Well, this is what we'll need in a second. Auto configure option. Yeah, that's what I'll need to fetch them, right? Auto configure tag. Is that even on here? Yeah, tag data iterator. Yeah, so there's two parts of this, right? So like I think you're both thinking about what we put right here to basically say I need a like I need all services that are tagged with UI component, but I also think I need that first part, right, that says that if you have a service that implements this interface, then you are going to get this tag. So that's a two-step process. You can just use the interface name. So this is why I do this. Yeah, so this is exactly what I was talking about. See, I'm doing it the old way. So a UI component interface. Is that the right thing? Like tagged iterator. I think that's what I want. It's not going to be an array though. Let's see here. Whoops, Symfony tagged iterator. All right, let's see here. Attributes. Yeah, it's going to be an iterable. Cool. Man, you can just use the interface name. My goodness. And then I think I can just return. Do I need that? That seems a little crazy. Let's see. Yeah, in the interface, auto configure tag. Oh, that's the other spot I need. This is great. I love having all of you here to take me through things. All right, so let's look at things you know, let's look at things piece by piece here. So I'm hearing that I need to have this auto configure tag here. And then app UI components. So let's actually stop there. So if just by having this line here, this is actually what I was looking for as a way to like auto tag the things that implement this. You shouldn't actually need to do that to add that to the interface. That's amazing. Kevin, can you explain that? So let me take you through the kind of like the internally like the two-step process here. So step one is I add this to my interface, and the result of this should be that we can say debug container what -- tag equals, and cool. So what that means is just by adding this, any service that implements this interface is going to automatically get this tag. So that's what we're seeing over here. We're saying, yeah, Toast UI component, it implements that interface, so it gets the app UI component tag. And then what step two normally would be to go into your where you want that collection and do something like this, which says, hey, pass me all of those services that have that tag, so I have this iterable of those. Kevin is saying, let's see if he's telling the truth. Kevin's usually pretty reliable. So we don't need to do that at all. We can just use the tagged iterator on the interface. Let's see here. I want to get info about my UI component collection. And show arguments. Tagged iterator for app components UI component interface. Yeah, that makes sense. But is this a automatic tag then? You got to explain that, Kevin, if that actually works. While we are waiting for Kevin to demystify that for us. This is my second week in a row doing a live stream where there was a really smart Kevin here answering my questions. I really, you know, you got a good group. Oh, you think it's the full? Oh, that makes sense. Of course, it would be the fully qualified name. Duh, wouldn't be just the short name. So app/components, app/components / and I'll probably need 2 slashes or space quotes around there. Hold on. What I need to do is do -- tags, so it shows me all the tags. And let's see here. We're looking for component. Oops. Mercury extension. Twig component tag. Got a lot of things with the word component inside of here. I don't know, Kevin. Maybe I'm wrong about this. I mean, it makes sense in theory, but I was wondering. I was like, how did that work internally? Does it auto tag it? All right, so let's go back to our step 2, and then Kevin, if this is a thing, you can tell us all later. But yeah, we'll go back to the kind of the normal step 2, which is still like so smooth. Just to be able to like auto tag everything like that, and then have it pass us everything like that is awesome. So now let's go and let's create a controller for this. Let's see here. We'll call it, whoops, over here. Come on, there we go. So how about UI component controller? Extend abstract controller, and we'll call it, I don't know, index. How about this will be our one that is going to be where we loop over everything. Again, I have to work. I'm not sure about that word components is a loaded word, but we'll see what happens. And the name equals app UI components index. Cool. And let me fix my bad syntax. There we go. And we're going to auto wire the UI component collection inside of here. Component collection. And then let's render something. Say UI component. There we go. Yeah, I like that. And do I have the Symfony plugin enabled for this? What? How did that happen? Enabled. There we go. Now I can just click to be really lazy and create that template. Extends base.html.twig. Cool. And I'm not really gonna. Well, that's fine. I'm not gonna worry about any of the styling right now. I'm not even sure that we would have an index page, but let's pretend that we have one for now. For components in components, so we should be able to loop over them. And we'll just do a div components dot name. Yeah, I made that static, by the way. Maybe I didn't need to make it static. Well, we'll worry about that later. The idea was that we might be able to loop over the components without instantiating them and get their names, so we could build a sidebar on the site like this without having to instantiate every single one of those things, but let's worry about that later. Anyways, that's why I made that static in the first place. All right, now I got too much stuff open, so let's close a whole bunch of stuff. And Symfony open local. I always forget what port I have things on. Let's try it. Components. Ta-da! Wow, look at that. All right, so we got our toast inside of there. So next up, I'm gonna actually create a page for this, because this is not really that interesting, right? This is gonna, if this page even exists at all in the future, it's just going to be a list, just a better looking list than I have. So let's do a key right there. This will be UI component show. We'll inject the component collection, but in this case we're going to find an individual one. So we'll say component equals component collection, and we're going to need a new method on there called get. I could be fancy and do like an array offset, but I'll just use get, and we need the key, right? So let's do a string. Oops. Cool. If not components, of course, we're going to throw a 404 in that component. Ooh, and actually, I don't render this template. Haha. This is where we'll be a little more dynamic. We have that component arrow gets. Oh, I need some PHP documentation on this. This is going to be component get template. But let me stop right there because things are getting a little bit crazy because that method doesn't exist. So I'm not getting any auto completion. So let's add that. Ooh, Kevin, okay. So to use the interface name as the tag, you need auto-configure tag on the interface without the named argument. Oh, that makes sense. Yeah, I was wondering about that, Kevin. I was like, man, it just would register everything? Let's actually do that real quick. So, yeah, so it's exactly what we're saying. This is actually really nice. These like tag strings, this is like a name we had to invent just now. I've never liked names that we need to invent. Anytime that we can just not do that and, for example, use a interface name, much better. So what Kevin's saying is if we just use this, then the name of the tag is going to be the fully qualified interface name. So that makes life easier, or at least more clear, because over here, instead of using this random string and wondering like where that is and what that came from, we're just going to use UI component interface : class. Awesome. And then before I finish that, this page should still work. So that proves that Kevin's idea of just using the tag, the interface as the tag, works. And let's do string get key. And we can make this more efficient later, probably. But yeah, that's the idea right there. Let's return a nullable component. Awesome. Cool. And now we can link to this. So over in our index.html twig, sorry if I'm getting to the point where I actually have quite a few things open. So path, and then we'll pass the key here to component.key. Cool. Let's see here. Ah, there we go. It's like I'm missing something. I'm missing my closing tag. Cool. There we go. And oh, because I probably saw my mistake. I think I have the wrong type hint, don't I? Yeah, not component. Come on, Ryan. What is? I don't even know what that is. Aha! I picked up Kevin. I picked up your class, dude. UI component interface. There we go. All right, now it's happier. We just haven't actually created that template yet. So let's do that. Templates, UI underscore components. Ooh, I already have that. Oh, of course I already have that, Ryan. You created an index page. Silly guy. Toast.html.twig. And I'm actually going to go steal from index so we can get that thing started. Awesome. And then components, let's say component.name. Cool. And let's see, UI components. Oh, because I have a typo on there. Sorry if I'm moving really quickly here. This is like full speed development. So I had a typo on the directory name inside the template. We could just make this maybe just that, so I don't have to typo that in the future. Kind of assumed we're living in that directory. Then we just need to update this one template name to render UI underscore components slash. Yeah, we'll see if we like that. And good. And then UI component collection, because I'm passing the collection in. Wow. Messed up a bunch of times, but now we have our page. So cool. So we have some setup work done. I have a few minutes left until I hit my self-imposed hour limit. This last little bit, I'm actually going to go steal some code. So secretly, I have actually a UX private repository where I do some experimenting. A while ago, 3 months ago, things get busy. 3 months ago, I actually started building out some of these pages. So I thought we'd just like steal some of the code from them. And this is kind of interesting because it creates, I'm using actually Twig components to help me render things. So specifically, you may or may not realize, but when you look at these demos, for example, on Flowbyte, these are actually inside of an iframe. And they're inside of an iframe so that you can isolate the markup from the rest of the page so it doesn't affect the rest of the page. So this is effectively its own little browser down here. And so I had the idea to kind of do that same thing. So let's see here. So I had a component that I want to go steal from that. What was it called? UI demo iframe. Cool. So let's go steal that. So templates components. And I might give it a different name though. UI component iframe.html.twig. So we'll put that there. This is an anonymous component. So I don't have a PHP class for this. I do have prop CSS, so that allows me to pass in a CSS variable. I don't know if I'm going to keep that or not, but the idea originally was that we would have a Tailwind version and a Bootstrap version. So this is a variable that you would pass in for those two separate things. And this renders an iframe with some very rough styling, and then actually leverages a stimulus controller. I'm sorry. Turns out you can't just take an iframe and put stuff inside. It doesn't work like that. You have to actually use JavaScript. So this is kind of cool. We have a little stimulus controller here, and we pass the content that we want to put inside the iframe to that stimulus controller, and then it uses just a tiny bit of JavaScript to pop it inside. So we're going to need to go steal that stimulus controller, which is going to be an assets, controllers, iframe content controller. That's how I like my controllers to look. I like them to be that tiny. I feel like I'm doing something right when they're that simple. iframe controller.js, I think I called it. iframe content controller. Paste that in. Cool. And then the last thing we need is this iframe content, which I will also go steal from over here. Let's see here. Close assets, templates, components, iframe content. Cool. This doesn't need to live in components, but I put it there. Underscore iframe, underscore content. Well, I have a lot of underscores and dashes there. I think I'm going to use underscores everywhere. So you can see in theory how we were thinking about Tailwind versus Bootstrap versus something else. So when we use this, we could render we could basically pass in a Tailwind variable, and it would include Tailwind. Also, it would include Bootstrap. Again, I don't know if we're going to do that, and I don't know if there's going to be a better way to do that, but that's why and how this was set up this way in the first place. So let me change this here. All right, then to use that, it's interesting to see that you have dasherized name for the stimulus controller file names. Man, I go back and forth on that. I feel like somebody should tell me what to do. In the last stack tutorial, I'm using underscores, and here I'm using dashes. I don't know. We should all just settle on one, and maybe Marco, you can tell me which one I should use, and then I'll use that one instead of being totally inconsistent. All right, so over here in Toast, I'm going to use that Twig component. So I'm going to steal some code from over here. Actually, I don't need to steal this code. It's really easy. So the idea is that we can use Twig : UI component iframe. And then whatever I pass in here, will be rendered inside the iframe. And just because I need it, even if we're not really using it yet, I need to pass in a CSS variable because we reference it inside of that page. So let's see if I have everything here. Notice my normal asset mapper advertisement here. When I got things set up today, I didn't run any build statements. Everything's just working. And my stimulus controller, I created it. It just works. We see it. Yeah, Rails implies underscores. I thought they did. And isn't there some normalization, Marco, though, when you use underscores in the file name that they become dashes when you use them inside of your HTML? Anyway, here's our iframe. And you can see that actually got right inside of our iframe. So that happened via JavaScript. So with our last moments here, let's actually try to grab a real kind of example from the tutorial. Let's see here. Last stack. I think I am far enough along that I have my Toast controller stuff. Cool. Let's go steal. Let's go steal some code. So let's see, base, no, flashes. So in the tutorial, I don't actually ever have a chance to move the toasts into a Twig component. Marco, yeah, because underscores are not valid attribute keys for something like targets. That's right. So I feel like, Marco, that's part of the reason maybe I do dashes sometimes, is I'm like, oh man, if we use dashes like in the file name, then we don't have that normalization step to underscores, that normalization step of using an underscore in the file name and then it becoming a dash in the actual controller name. But then I read the official documentation and I see underscores everywhere, and so I think that's why I'm going back and forth between what the best thing is to do. Julian, asking about that props thing. Yeah, sorry, I went over that really quickly. So you were asking about right here. So this is a way, let me close things here. So normally if I passed in foo equals bar here, that would result in there being on the iframe where is it? Hold on a second. I'm not being a good user of my of the system here. I should have attributes at defaults here to allow us to pass extra attributes on here. So let's do that. And then for this iframe iframe data controller. So, man, these live codings are really useful, but I realize I bounce from topic to topic. I'm not really using the stimulus underscore controller helper anymore. I am just doing it by hand in a lot of cases. Iframe content. And then for the value, the only problem with that is the values for me are like really hard to remember what they are. You know what? I'm not going to convert this right now. I'm going to keep it. I'm going to keep it as a stimulus controller. Let's see here. So to do that, yeah, you know, I'm going down too much of a rabbit hole. Yeah, the shorter answer, Julian, is that this allows you to have a variable. So I can now pass in, when I render this, CSS equals tailwind. That would normally go on my element as an attribute, but we actually want this to be a variable. So by defining it up here, this makes it not render as an attribute, but instead just be available as a variable. So you can see we're like using that as a variable down there. So that is the shorter answer before I went on a total tangent and started destroying my template. Marco, I only picked it up because I wanted to support more frameworks with the Stimulus LSP, and I think it currently would break without underscores. So maybe we should go with underscores here. The ship, for better or worse, the ship has left the harbor with using underscores as kind of the best practice for naming your files, your stimulus controller file names. All right. Anyway, the last thing I wanted to do here was see if we could actually get in a working example of our toast, or semi-working example of our toast. So for that, well, first let's create a toast component. So inside components, we'll create toast.html twig. There we go. And I'm not going to do it right now, but this is normally where I would do curly curly attributes. Well, I can do that part, but these items here, I would use like dot defaults, and then I would pass like class, and I would set those classes there. And the reason we do that is because it allows us to like add more classes when we call this, in case we need to do that. But for now, I'll at least render attributes. Let's see, what other stuff do I have inside of here? For toast here, we have a message. So for that, let's actually do block content end block. Perfect. I think I don't have any other Twig code in here. Yeah, awesome. Yeah, so that's as simple as that. That's actually kind of just stealing our toast stimulus components from the last stack tutorial. And over here, let's just use that. Come on, AI. Be better than that. All right, toast.html twig. And inside of here, we will just do something like successfully saved. Right? Cool. Awesome. And that would be the like demo portion of this. This is not going to look good yet. It's not going to work good. The reason it's not going to look good is because I don't actually have Tailwind set up. So in my other private repository, I actually have Tailwind set up and building. If you remember, the iframe down here actually points to a tailwind.css file that doesn't actually exist. And oh, and I also have escaping problems, don't I? And I also have escaping problems. Oh, no, I don't. No, never mind. No, it's escaped correctly. It's escaping. It looks like escaping problems because it's on the attribute. No, that's the system working perfectly. So it's not going to look good yet. And we also don't have the stimulus controller. So that would be kind of like be the second thing. So we need like the demo here. But below this, we would actually need to show the code. Show the code for the toast components. And B, show the stimulus code for the toast controller. So let me actually at least grab that as well, so we have that in our project. Where is it? Oh yeah. I call it closable. So there's not a toast specific controller in the last tech tutorial. We just have this controller that is kind of able to close things, and in some cases auto close. So let's call this closable underscore controller.js. I'll go with the more official naming. Awesome. And that should, I think, actually, this will still be really ugly, but I think it actually should work better. So let's go here. Let's see. Hold on. Where did it go? Did it disappear? Oh, yeah, it did disappear. Because one of the features that we have inside of our toast.html twig was we have the ability to do an auto close. Oh, that shouldn't have closed immediately, though. All right, let's do some debugging here. What happened to my toast? Where did you go, toast? Oh, of course. Never mind. I gotta check my console here. Duh. So in this case, because I have this JavaScript error, the JavaScript never fired that actually put the content into the iframe. So I'm leveraging stimulus use. So this is actually another bit of metadata with this whole idea, which is I might need to give you the HTML, the stimulus controller, and maybe the stimulus controller also depends on another third-party library. So in this case, I'm leveraging stimulus use and its use transition to help us do like a fade out effect. So inside of here, it would be show and install for the stimulus use package. So we would need to keep track of like the dependencies that a controller might have so that we can tell the user to install those as well. So let's over here, bin console, import map require, stimulus use. Can ignore those, and cool. Now I got it in here, and boop. I think, and that, okay, again, we didn't see it because I'm completely missing the styling, but that actually did, I believe, close. You can see I click here, it did closable close. The close is, if I remember, just adding a hidden class from Tailwind. So that's why we still see it here. It's like, hey, I closed it by adding a hidden class. Yeah, you can see the hidden class right there. But since we're not using Tailwind, it doesn't get hidden. So we're missing the styling on here, but it should work if everything went correctly. And you know what? I know I'm over my self-imposed time, but I'm gonna see if I can get that Tailwind working in like 2 minutes. So SymphonyCast Tailwind bundle. So let's install that. Cool, that's installed. Now bin console Tailwind init, that just creates the configuration file. Oh, but it's trying to put it inside of app.css. So that's a path we can configure, but we want to create a tailwind.css. And the reason we want a tailwind.css is inside of our iframe system. That's what I'm pointing to. So I'm kind of expecting, hey, we're gonna have a special style /tailwind.css file. That's what Tailwind's gonna be built into. So I'm gonna bootstrap this tailwind.css file, and then we just need to configure the SymphonyCast package to look at that instead of the normal one. So let's call it SymphonyCasts tailwind.yaml. And since I can't remember what the config looks like for this, I'll do debug config SymphonyCasts /tailwind. Cool, and there we go, the input file. So SymphonyCasts _tailwind input file, and I think I can do just a path like that. Let's find out. Cool. All right, so let's try the init command again. Does it not exist? Did I put it in a different directory? Oh. Is it still? This might be a little Symfony cache bug here. I'm wondering if it saw my new config file. Let's check out. I'm going to go back to debug config here. And cool. Now you can see the input CSS does see my file. Tailwind init. So this is going to download Tailwind in the background. It's downloading the brand new Tailwind 3.4, which has some cool fancy features. And it gives us a tailwind.config.js file. And then it also added a couple lines to this file, which need to be there. And now we'll do Tailwind build. And let's see. Moment of truth. Ta-da! Look at that. That's cool. I want that to be shared. An auto close, a timer bar. It's styled nicely. I can click X. It fades out. I totally have the hover wrong. That's why we share these things, so we can get the hover right on dark mode and light mode. I cheated a little bit on last stack because it's dark mode only, so that's probably why it looks bad inside the light mode right here. So got it all the way to the end. So that's it. I'm gonna stop right there. I really appreciate the conversation on the first 30 minutes here. It was also just fun to code and have you all remind me of the new dependency injection features. So yeah, I don't have this code somewhere yet. I probably should maybe create a work in progress pull request so that we can kind of track ideas on here. There's a lot of things to still figure out. Again, like the biggest one for me is that Tailwind versus Bootstrap versus something else. I think the advice probably of going Tailwind first and then seeing how much demand we have and how complicated it would be to do the other things. But yeah, I mean, I think it'd be so cool in 2024 for us to have this spot to like just share and find these solutions. All right, I'm gonna stop talking. Thank you all for being here, and I'll see you all in 2024. All right, later.